Tyler Bennett stood frozen in the corridor of Nexra Station, watching something that made his blood run cold. A small figure was making her way down the central staircase, moving slowly and carefully. Her fingers traced along the railing as she counted each step under her breath. She had pale silver skin that seemed to glow faintly under the station's artificial lights, and where her eyes should have been, there were only smooth patches of skin. Her name was Mira, though Tyler didn't know that yet. What he did know was that she was about to be attacked, and everyone around him was pretending not to notice. 3 large reptilian figures emerged from behind a support column. Their bronze scales gleamed as they moved into position, blocking the stairway above the girl. Tyler had seen these Kryn students before during his 2 weeks on the station. They were from a warrior species, the kind that valued strength above everything else. Their leader was a brute named Draxel, nearly 7 feet tall with scars already marking his scales despite his young age. Mira seemed to sense something was wrong. She paused, her head tilting slightly as if listening. Her fingers tightened on the railing. But before she could react, Draxel's clawed hand shot out and shoved her hard between the shoulder blades. Time seemed to slow down. Myra's small body pitched forward, her arms flailing uselessly as she tumbled down the metal stairs. The sound of her body hitting each step echoed through the corridor like drumbeats. Other students, dozens of them from at least 10 different species, simply stepped around her fallen form and continued on their way. Some glanced back with what might have been pity or concern, but none stopped to help. The Kryn gang laughed, a harsh croaking sound that made Tyler's hands curl into fists. They high-fived each other with their clawed hands before disappearing back into the crowd of students heading to morning classes. Tyler's feet were moving before his brain fully caught up. He pushed through the crowd and knelt beside Mira. She was curled into a ball, her breath coming in short gasps. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, stark red against her silver skin. "Hey, are you okay?" Tyler asked, already knowing it was a stupid question. He gently touched her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Mira flinched away from his touch, then seemed to realize he wasn't a threat. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice shook. "Please just go. You shouldn't be here." "Like hell I'm leaving you here," Tyler said. He looked around at the other students still streaming past them. "Can somebody help? She needs medical attention." A few aliens glanced over but quickly looked away when they saw what was happening. One insectoid student actually sped up, his multiple legs clicking rapidly against the floor as he hurried away. Tyler felt anger burning in his chest. This wasn't right. Back on Earth, at his high school in Michigan, people helped when someone got hurt. Sure, there were bullies there too, but this level of casual cruelty, this complete indifference from everyone around them, it made him sick. "Come on," he said, slipping his arm carefully under Myra's shoulders. "Medical bay. Now." "You don't understand," Mira said, but she let him help her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and Tyler noticed she was favoring her left side. "They'll just make it worse if you interfere." "They can try," Tyler muttered. He guided her slowly through the corridors, supporting most of her weight. She was surprisingly light, barely coming up to his shoulder even though she looked about his age. The medical bay was located 2 levels down, in a section of the station designed to accommodate the biological needs of multiple species. The Quellan doctor on duty, a being with 4 arms and skin that shifted between blue and purple, took one look at Mira and ushered them into an examination room without asking questions. While the doctor worked, scanning Mira with devices Tyler didn't recognize, he leaned against the wall and really looked at her for the first time. She couldn't have been more than 16 or 17 in Earth years. Her clothes, a simple gray uniform that all academy students wore, were torn at the knees and elbows. But what struck him most was her expression. She didn't look surprised or even particularly upset. She looked resigned, like this was just another day. "This has happened before," Tyler said. It wasn't a question. Mira was silent for a moment. The doctor had given her something for the pain, and she sat on the examination table with her hands folded in her lap. Finally she nodded. "Every day for the past 3 months. Every day." Tyler felt his anger reignite. "And nobody's done anything about it?" "I reported it," Mira said quietly. "Multiple times. Draxel's father is a high-ranking general in the Kryn military fleet. His uncle sits on the station's diplomatic council. My complaints were filed and then forgotten." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns on the table's surface. "The teachers know. Station security knows. Everyone knows. But the Kryn are important, and I'm just a blind Velan girl who doesn't matter to anyone." The doctor finished the examination and left them alone, murmuring something about contusions and minor fractures that would heal in a few days. Tyler pulled up a chair and sat down across from Mira. "Why that staircase?" he asked. "Can't you take a different route to class?" Myra's laugh was bitter. "That's the only accessible path from my dorm to the academy wing. The other routes have ladders or narrow passages built for species that can climb or fly or squeeze through tight spaces. The main stairwell is supposed to be for everyone, including people like me who need clear, straightforward paths." She turned her head toward him even though she couldn't see him. "They know I have to use those stairs. That's why they wait there every single morning." Tyler sat back in his chair processing this. He'd been on Nexera Station for exactly 2 weeks, part of Earth's new cultural exchange program with the galactic community. Humanity had only made first contact 5 years ago, and they were still the new kids on the cosmic block. He'd been so excited to come here to see aliens and learn about other civilizations. Nobody had told him that some of those civilizations were just as messed up as humans could be. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mira." "I'm Tyler." He stood up and offered his hand, then realized she might not know the gesture. But Mira reached out and took it, her grip surprisingly firm despite her injuries. "Thank you for helping me, Tyler," she said. "But you should stay away from me now. Draxel doesn't like interference. If he sees you with me again, he'll target you too." Tyler thought about his little sister Emily back home, about how she'd been bullied in middle school until he'd stepped in. He thought about his grandfather, who told him stories about standing up to injustice even when it was dangerous. He thought about what kind of person he wanted to be. "Let him try," Tyler said. Tyler sat in the station's massive library the next morning, his fingers flying across the holographic display. The library was unlike anything on Earth. It stretched across 3 levels, with sections designed for species that preferred darkness, others flooded with ultraviolet light, and some even filled with water for aquatic beings. The human section was modest, tucked into a corner with normal lighting and chairs that didn't require 4 legs or tentacles. He barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mira tumbling down those stairs while dozens of students walked past like nothing was happening. The image burned in his mind, refusing to let him rest. Now he was researching. If he was going to help Mira, he needed to understand what he was up against. The Kryn species file painted a clear picture. They came from a high-gravity world where only the strong survived. Their entire culture revolved around martial prowess and military achievement. Children began combat training at 5 years old. By the time they reached adolescence, most Kryn could break bones with their bare hands. Their government was a stratocracy, ruled entirely by military officials based on battle merit. Tyler leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Great. So he was planning to confront highly trained warriors who'd been learning to fight since kindergarten. This was getting better and better. "You look troubled, roommate." Tyler glanced up to see Click, his insectoid roommate, approaching with that peculiar sideways walk his species used. Click had 6 legs, compound eyes that saw in multiple spectrums, and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. Despite his alien appearance, he'd been nothing but friendly since Tyler arrived. "Just doing some reading," Tyler said, minimizing the display. But Click's multiple eyes had already caught what he was looking at. "Ah, the Kryn." Click settled into a chair, his carapace scraping slightly against the metal. "You helped the Velan girl yesterday. I saw. News travels fast. On a station this size, everything travels fast." Click's mandibles clicked in what Tyler had learned was his species' version of a sigh. "I am ashamed to admit I have walked past her many times. We all have. In my culture, we prioritize the hive over the individual. It is not an excuse, merely an explanation for my cowardice." Tyler looked at his roommate with new respect. "It took guts to admit something like that. You're not the one pushing her downstairs." "No, but I am one of many who allowed it to continue." Click leaned forward. "What are you planning, Tyler Bennett? I know that look. You humans are new to the galactic stage, but already we have learned you are a stubborn species." "I'm going to stop them," Tyler said simply. "They will hurt you. Badly. Probably. Station security will not help. The Kryn families have too much influence." "I know." Click was silent for a moment, his antennae twitching. "Then perhaps you need a different approach. The Kryn respect strength, but there are many kinds of strength. Physical force is merely the most obvious." That got Tyler thinking. Click was right. He couldn't beat Draxel in a fight. Even if he trained for years, humans just weren't built for combat against a species that evolved in high gravity. But there were other ways to be strong. Over the next few hours, a plan began to form. Tyler spent the afternoon moving through the station, talking to other students. He was surprised by how many of them approached him once they saw what he was researching. Word really did travel fast. A Quellan student named Lisa found him in the cafeteria. Her species were empaths, able to sense emotions through some biological mechanism Tyler didn't fully understand. She had soft purple skin and large eyes that seemed perpetually sad. "I felt Myra's fear every day," Lisa said quietly, sitting across from him with her tray of gelatinous food. "It radiates from her like heat. Fear and pain and resignation. I wanted to help, but I was scared. The Kryn have targeted empaths before. They enjoy causing pain when they know someone can feel it." "I'm gathering evidence," Tyler told her. "Video documentation, witness statements. Would you be willing to testify about what you've sensed from Mira?" Lisa's hands trembled slightly, but she nodded. "Yes, I will." More students came forward as the day wore on. A crystalline silicate named Reed who'd shared classes with Draxel. A floating gas being named Whisper who'd witnessed multiple attacks. A young Kelmori who'd seen Mira limping to the medical bay at least a dozen times. They all had the same story. They'd all stayed silent out of fear. Tyler recorded each conversation on his personal device, the small holographic recorder that humans were issued for documenting their cultural exchange experiences. Every student gave permission to use their testimony. By evening he had 15 witness statements. But he needed more. He needed undeniable proof. The next morning, Tyler positioned himself near the central stairwell an hour before classes started. He found a spot behind a structural support beam where he had a clear view but wouldn't be easily seen. His recorder was active, set to capture everything. His heart pounded as students began flowing through the corridor. He felt like a coward, hiding and watching instead of acting. But this was necessary. Without evidence, it would just be his word against the Kryn, and he already knew how that would end. Mira appeared right on schedule, moving carefully down the hallway. Even from a distance, Tyler could see the fresh bruises on her arms from yesterday's fall. She reached the stairs and began her slow, cautious descent. Draxel and his two companions emerged from their hiding spot like predators stalking prey. Tyler's hands clenched around his recorder as he watched them position themselves above Mira. She was only 3 steps down when Draxel shoved her. Tyler had to bite his tongue to keep from shouting. The recorder captured everything. Myra's fall, the sickening sound of her body hitting metal steps, the Kryn's laughter, and most damning of all, the dozens of students who walked past without helping. It was all there, undeniable and horrifying. After the Kryn left and someone finally helped Mira up, Tyler remained hidden for another 10 minutes, making sure his hands stopped shaking before he moved. He had what he needed. Now came the hard part. That evening he found Mira in her dorm room. She answered his knock hesitantly, surprised to see him. "Tyler? What are you doing here?" "I need to show you something," he said. "And I need your permission." He explained his plan while showing her the footage and witness statements. As she listened through an audio interface designed for her species, her expression changed from skepticism to something that might have been hope. "This will make them angrier," she said when he finished. "Going public, embarrassing them. In Kryn culture, that's worse than the actual crime." "I know. But if we do nothing, this continues forever. How many more falls can you take, Mira? How many more bruises and broken bones?" She was quiet for a long time. Her fingers drummed against her desk in that rhythmic pattern he'd seen before. Finally she spoke. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. You've only been here 2 weeks. You could just keep your head down and stay safe." Tyler thought about how to explain it. Back on Earth, humans have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I've seen a lot of people doing nothing here, Mira. I've seen you falling down those stairs while everyone walks past. I can't be one of those people. Even if it costs you? Even then. Mira reached out, her hand finding his with the precision of someone who'd learned to navigate the world without sight. "Okay, do it. But promise me something. If this fails, if nothing changes, you'll let it go. Don't make yourself a martyr for me." Tyler hesitated but finally nodded. "I promise." The next morning, Tyler submitted his evidence package to station security with all 15 witness statements attached. He also sent copies to 3 galactic news networks and posted a public version with Myra's identity protected on the station's community board. By lunch, the response was explosive. The community board post had hundreds of comments. Students were sharing it, parents were demanding answers, and the news networks were running stories. Suddenly, what happened to Mira every morning wasn't a secret anymore. It was a scandal. Tyler received a formal summons to Security Chief Vorna's office that afternoon. Click walked with him to the security wing, offering moral support with his presence. "Whatever happens," Click said as they reached the office door, "you did something brave. My hive would be proud to count you among us. Tyler smiled despite his nervousness. Thanks, buddy. He stepped into the office, not knowing if he was about to be thanked or expelled from the station, but certain of one thing: staying silent was never an option. Retried. Security Chief Vorna was even more intimidating up close. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her face and skin that looked like polished obsidian. Her species, the Kelmori, were known throughout the galaxy for their rigid sense of justice and devotion to law. Awards and commendations from a dozen different worlds covered her office walls. Tyler stood in front of her desk, trying not to show how nervous he felt. His hands were sweating, and his heart hammered in his chest like it was trying to escape. Sit down, Cadet Bennett, Chief Vorna said, her voice surprisingly soft for someone so imposing. Tyler sat, his legs grateful for the support. He'd been expecting anger, maybe threats. What he got instead shocked him completely. I owe you an apology, Vorna said. Tyler blinked. I'm sorry, what? An apology, she repeated, folding her 4-fingered hands on the desk. The Velan student, Mira, filed complaints with my office on 7 separate occasions over the past 3 months. Each time, her complaints were documented and then quietly filed away. No investigations were launched. No disciplinary actions were taken. This happened because I allowed political pressure to override my duty. She pulled up a holographic display showing official correspondence. Tyler could see messages from Kryn military officials, diplomatic notes, veiled threats about interspecies relations and trade agreements. The pressure had come from the top and it had been relentless. The Kryn families involved are powerful, Vorna continued. General Drax, the boy's father, commands 3 battle fleets. His brother sits on the Galactic Trade Council. When they made it clear that pursuing charges would be seen as a diplomatic incident, my superiors told me to exercise discretion. I chose to interpret discretion as inaction. That was wrong. Tyler found his voice. So what happens now? Now, thanks to your very public documentation, I no longer have the luxury of looking the other way. 3 news networks are running the story. The station's community board is flooded with outraged parents and students. The Galactic Education Council has already contacted the station administrator demanding answers. For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Vorna's face. You've made quite a mess, Cadet Bennett. A necessary mess, but a mess nonetheless. Am I in trouble? For documenting a crime and reporting it through proper channels? Hardly. Though I should warn you, you've made powerful enemies. The Kryn families are furious. They view this public exposure as a deliberate attack on their honor. In their culture, public humiliation demands a response. A chill ran down Tyler's spine. What kind of response? That's what concerns me. Vorna stood and walked to the window overlooking the station's main hub. Several Kryn adults arrived this morning, claiming they're here to support their children through the disciplinary process. But my sources tell me they're meeting with station administrators, applying pressure, calling in favors. They want this to disappear. Can they make it disappear? Not anymore. The evidence is too public, too damning. But they can make life difficult for everyone involved. She turned back to Tyler. I'm assigning you a security escort. Officer Dane will accompany you everywhere until this situation is resolved. He's one of my best. Officer Dane turned out to be a Quellan, one of the purple-skinned empaths like Lisa. He was shorter than Tyler but moved with the confidence of someone trained in station security protocols. He introduced himself outside Vorna's office with a firm handshake and a serious expression. Don't worry, kid, Dane said. I've got your back. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for 3 days later. Tyler spent those days in a strange state of tension. Students approached him constantly, some thanking him, others warning him that he'd crossed a line. Click stuck close, offering support in his quiet way. And Mira, for the first time since Tyler had known her, moved through the station without that constant fear radiating from her posture. The hearing chamber was packed when the day arrived. Tyler had expected a small room with a few officials. Instead, he walked into an amphitheater-style space filled with at least 200 beings from dozens of species. Students, faculty, diplomatic observers, and journalists all crammed into the available seats. And there, in the gallery section, sat 5 adult Kryn. Their scales were darker than the students', marked with scars and military decorations. Their eyes tracked Tyler as he entered, cold and predatory. The largest one, who had to be General Drax himself, radiated such intense hostility that even without empathic abilities Tyler could feel it. The hearing panel consisted of 3 administrators from different species. They called Mira to testify first. Tyler watched as she made her way to the witness stand, moving with more confidence than he'd ever seen from her. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. She described 3 months of daily attacks. She talked about injuries she'd hidden because she was afraid of retaliation. She explained how she'd reported the incident 7 times and nothing had changed. She described the psychological weight of waking up every morning knowing violence awaited her. "I stopped hoping anyone would help," Mira said quietly. "I just wanted to survive until the term ended and I could go home. Then Tyler helped me. A human who'd been on this station for 2 weeks did what everyone else couldn't or wouldn't do. He saw me as someone worth protecting." Lisa testified next, describing the fear and pain she'd sensed from Mira daily. Other students corroborated the pattern. Reed, the crystalline silicate, admitted that Draxel bragged about the attacks in their shared classes, treating them like entertainment. Then Tyler presented his video evidence. The chamber fell completely silent as the footage played. Myra's fall, the laughter, the students walking past. It lasted less than a minute, but that minute felt eternal. When it ended, Tyler could see beings throughout the chamber shifting uncomfortably. Even some of the Kryn adults looked disturbed. Draxel's appointed defender, a Kryn lawyer who'd arrived with the families, stood to present his case. His argument was exactly what Tyler feared it would be. "This is a cultural misunderstanding," the defender stated. "In Kryn society, strength determines social standing. Challenging the weak is not cruelty but a traditional method of establishing hierarchy. My client and his companions were simply engaging in behaviors that are normal and accepted within their culture. To judge them by the standards of other species is to impose foreign values on Kryn youth." The argument landed differently than Tyler expected. Some beings in the chamber seemed to consider it seriously. A few nodded. The cultural relativism defense was apparently more powerful than he'd hoped. Tyler felt frustration building in his chest. How could anyone defend pushing a blind girl downstairs as cultural practice? But before he could speak, something unexpected happened. One of the adult Kryn stood up in the gallery. The entire chamber fell silent. General Drax's father, an elderly Kryn covered in battle scars, stepped forward. His scales were so dark they were almost black, and he moved with the careful precision of someone who'd survived countless fights. "I am General Krathen," the elder Kryn said in perfect common, deliberately choosing the shared language. "I have fought in 17 campaigns across this galaxy. I have commanded warriors in battles that shaped the fate of worlds. I know what true strength looks like." He turned to face the video screen where Myra's fall was frozen. "What I see here is not strength. This is cowardice. Attacking someone weaker, someone who cannot defend themselves, someone whose only crime was being born different. This is not the warrior's way. This is the behavior of prey animals, lashing out in fear at what they don't understand." The chamber erupted in whispers. General Drax looked like he'd been struck. His son Draxel, sitting with the other accused students, stared at his grandfather in shock. Krathen continued, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "My grandson has brought shame to our family. Not because he was caught. Not because his actions were made public. But because his actions were shameful. In ancient Kryn tradition, before we reached the stars, warriors were protectors. We defended those who could not defend themselves. We stood against cruelty and injustice. When did we forget this? When did we decide that might alone makes right?" He walked to where Draxel sat and removed something from his grandson's uniform. It was a family crest, a symbol of lineage and honor. The act of removing it publicly was clearly significant, because several Kryn in the chamber gasped. "You may return to the family when you understand what honor truly means," Krathen said to his grandson. Then he turned to the other Kryn parents. "I suggest you do the same with your children. They have learned cruelty from our examples. It is time we taught them something better." The other Kryn adults, unable to stand against a war hero's judgment, reluctantly removed their family crests from their children. The students sat there, stripped of their symbols, looking smaller somehow despite their size. The hearing panel deliberated for less than an hour. Their verdict was unanimous: expulsion from the academy, 1 year of mandatory community service on species integration projects, and a 5-year ban from Nexera Station. Tyler watched as security escorted Draxel and his companions out of the chamber. As they passed, Draxel's eyes locked onto Tyler's. The look wasn't remorse or shame. It was pure hatred, a promise that this wasn't finished. That night, Tyler found Mira in the observation deck, staring out at the stars through senses he didn't understand. He sat beside her in comfortable silence. "Thank you," she said finally. "You already thanked me." "Not properly. Not for everything. She turned toward him. For the first time in 3 months I walked through the station today without fear. Do you know what that feels like? Tyler smiled. I'm glad. They sat together, watching distant stars, neither noticing the shadow that moved in the corridor behind them, or the figure that watched from the darkness with patient, vengeful eyes. 2 weeks passed and life on Nexra Station began to feel almost normal. Tyler walked to his morning classes without Officer Dane shadowing his every step. The security escort had been removed after the Kryn families left the station in disgrace. Students no longer stared at him in hallways, and the constant buzz of conversation about the hearing had finally died down. Mira was different now. Tyler saw it every time they met for lunch in the cafeteria or studied together in the library. She walked with her head up, no longer hunched over like she was trying to make herself invisible. She laughed more easily. She'd even joined a student advocacy group that was pushing for better protection policies across the station. But Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It started small. The sense of being watched when he walked alone. Shadows that seemed to move in his peripheral vision but disappeared when he turned to look. Messages on his personal device from anonymous accounts, nothing threatening exactly, just odd questions about his schedule or where he'd be at certain times. Click noticed Tyler's unease. One evening, as they sat in their shared quarters, the insectoid put down the data pad he'd been reading and fixed all his compound eyes on Tyler. You have been distracted, roommate? Your mind is elsewhere. Tyler rubbed his face. It's probably nothing. Just feeling paranoid, I guess. Paranoia can be wisdom when you have made powerful enemies, Click said. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Kryn do not forget humiliation easily. Their culture values revenge as much as honor. But they're gone. Draxel and his crew were expelled and banned from the station. Yes. But are you certain all of them left? The question planted a seed of doubt that Tyler couldn't shake. He tried to focus on his studies, on the cultural exchange reports he was supposed to be writing about his experiences. But concentration was difficult when every corridor seemed to hold potential threats. Other students started treating him differently too, though not in ways he expected. Some, especially those from warrior cultures, gave him cold looks in passing. He overheard conversations that stopped abruptly when he approached. A Kryn student in his quantum physics class, one who'd never been involved in the bullying, dropped the course entirely after Tyler sat near him. You disrupted the natural order, a Targalian student told him bluntly one day. The lizard-like being had cornered Tyler in the library. Hierarchies exist in every society. The strong rise, the weak fall. You interfered with something you don't understand because you've only been here a month. Tyler felt his temper flare. I understand that pushing a blind girl downstairs every day isn't a hierarchy. It's cruelty. And now you've created diplomatic tensions between species, made families lose face and convinced yourself you're a hero. The Targalian's tail swished irritably. The galaxy is more complicated than your simple Earth morality. The conversation haunted Tyler for days. Was he wrong? Had he made things worse by imposing his values? He talked to Mira about it during one of their library study sessions. Do you regret what we did? He asked her. Mira was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edges of her data pad. No. But I understand what you're feeling. I've had similar conversations. Some students think I should have just endured it quietly, that making it public was dishonorable somehow. As if suffering in silence is more noble than demanding justice. How do you deal with it? I remind myself that I'm not limping to the medical bay anymore. That I can use the stairs without fear. That other students who were being quietly bullied have found the courage to report it because of what happened. She smiled slightly. Change is uncomfortable, Tyler. It always is. That doesn't make it wrong. 3 weeks after the hearing, Tyler received an urgent message during his evening meal. It was from Officer Dane, the security escort who'd been assigned to him. The message was brief. Have you seen Mira today? Tyler's blood ran cold. He immediately tried to contact Mira through her personal device. No response. He checked the library, her usual study spots, the observation deck where they sometimes talked. Nothing. He met Officer Dane in the security office. The Quellen's empathic abilities made him naturally attuned to emotions, and right now his expression radiated concern. She missed her advanced mathematics class this afternoon, Dane explained. Professor Helix reported it because Mira has perfect attendance. We've checked her dormitory, the meditation centers, all her regular locations. She's not responding to communications. How long has she been missing? At least 4 hours. Tyler's mind raced. 4 hours was a long time on a station this size. Then a terrible thought occurred to him. He remembered Draxel's expression at the hearing, that look of pure hatred. He remembered Click's warning about Kryn revenge culture. The stairwell, Tyler said suddenly. The central stairwell where it all happened. If someone wanted to send a message, that's where they'd do it. Dane's eyes widened. Come with me. Now. They ran through the corridors, Dane speaking rapidly into his communicator to alert other security personnel. Tyler's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Please let her be okay, he thought. Please let me be wrong. The central stairwell was in the older section of the station, less monitored than newer areas. As they approached, Tyler saw why Mira might have been lured here. The lighting was dimmer, the foot traffic lighter during evening hours. They found her halfway down the main staircase, backed against the railing by three figures in environmental suits. The suits were designed for species that needed different atmospheric conditions, but they also conveniently obscured the wearers' identities. The suits' helmets were darkened, faces invisible. But Tyler recognized the body language, the way they moved. He'd seen it before in the hearing chamber footage. One of them was definitely Draxel. Mira! Tyler shouted. The figures turned toward him. One of them lunged at Tyler before he could react. The environmental suit made them stronger, augmented their movements. Tyler barely dodged the first strike, stumbling backward. He wasn't a fighter. His 2 weeks of basic station security orientation hadn't prepared him for actual combat. Officer Dane moved with professional precision, engaging one of the attackers with practiced efficiency. But there were 3 of them and only 2 defenders, and Draxel himself was advancing on Mira with clear intent. Tyler's mind went into overdrive. He couldn't reach Mira in time. Draxel was bigger, stronger, trained since childhood in combat. A direct confrontation would end badly. He needed another option, something that would level the playing field. His eyes landed on the environmental control panel near the stairwell entrance. Every major corridor had them, designed to adjust conditions for different species. Gravity, atmosphere, temperature, all controlled through emergency protocols Tyler had learned during his orientation. He broke away from his attacker and lunged for the panel, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. He accessed the emergency gravity controls and pushed them to maximum, conditions that would crush most unprotected beings. The gravity surge hit like a physical wave. Everyone on the stairwell dropped to their knees, including Tyler. The environmental suits the attackers wore had compensators, but they needed a moment to adjust to the sudden change. That moment was all Tyler needed. He dragged himself across the floor, fighting against gravity that felt like it was trying to press him flat. Every movement was agony. His muscles screamed in protest. But he reached Mira and positioned himself between her and Draxel, using his body as a shield. Station alarms blared. Emergency lights flashed. Security personnel flooded into the stairwell from multiple directions, responding to the gravity alert. Officer Dane had already sealed the exits remotely. The attackers were trapped. Security stripped away the environmental suits. Draxel's reptilian face appeared first, his expression twisted with rage and hatred. His 2 accomplices were Kryn students who'd already been expelled, who'd somehow smuggled themselves back onto the station. The arrest happened quickly. Draxel struggled and snarled threats, but restraints designed for dangerous species held him securely. As security dragged him away, his eyes locked onto Tyler's one final time. "This doesn't end here, human," Draxel hissed. "You've made an enemy for life." "Get in line," Tyler muttered, too exhausted to care about threats. The gravity returned to normal. Tyler's muscles felt like jelly. Medical personnel arrived and began checking everyone for injuries. A medic with too many tentacles examined Tyler's arms where he'd scraped them, dragging himself across the floor. Mira sat beside him, her hand gripping his tightly. She was shaking but otherwise unharmed. Officer Dane stood nearby, speaking rapidly into his communicator about security breaches and how 3 expelled students had managed to board the station. "You came for me," Mira said quietly. "Of course I did. You could have been killed." Tyler laughed, though it came out more like a wheeze. "Yeah, I noticed that during the part where I couldn't breathe. Note to self, maximum gravity really sucks." Despite everything, Mira smiled. "You're an idiot. I've been told that before." The medical bay kept them for observation overnight. Tyler lay in a bed designed for human physiology, staring at the ceiling. His body ached everywhere, bruises already forming where he'd hit the floor. But Mira was safe in the next room, and Draxel was in a detention cell facing actual criminal charges this time, not just disciplinary action. Chief Vorna visited before the night shift ended. The Kryn government has issued a formal apology, she told Tyler. General Crathen personally denounced his grandson's actions and is supporting the criminal prosecution. This has become a major incident in Kryn society. There's a debate happening across their worlds about honor and tradition. That's good, I guess, Tyler said. It is. Though I doubt it feels that way to you right now. Vorna's 4 eyes studied him carefully. You understand the price of standing up, Cadet Bennett? Not everyone does. Many people think being right protects them. It doesn't. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you. Would you do it differently? Tyler asked. If you could go back knowing what would happen? Vorna was quiet for a long moment. No. But I'm not sure that makes it easier. After she left, Tyler closed his eyes and finally let himself feel the weight of everything that had happened. The fear, the anger, the exhaustion. He'd stood up for someone who needed help, and he'd do it again. But Vorna was right. There was a price for that choice and he was still paying it. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within days, every major network across human space was running the story. A human child had saved an alien prince. More than that, she had stood up to armed soldiers without flinching. The footage from security cameras showed everything. Emma holding the small Verithan close. Her voice steady as she told grown warriors to back off. Her complete refusal to let fear control her actions. At first, the Verithan Empire stayed quiet. Their diplomats gave careful statements about investigating the incident. Behind closed doors, though, something remarkable was happening. The young prince himself demanded to address their high council. No one could remember the last time a child had made such a request. No one could remember the last time it had been granted. The prince stood before the greatest leaders of his people. His voice was small but clear. He told them about being lost and terrified. About the human child who found him crying in an alley. About how she shared her food even though she had little. About how she made him laugh when he thought he would never stop being scared. About how she put herself between him and danger without hesitation. Then he said something that changed everything. He said that Emma had shown him what honor truly meant. Not the honor of battle or conquest. Not the honor of following orders or maintaining appearances. Real honor. The kind that meant protecting someone simply because it was right. The kind that meant showing kindness to a stranger who needed help. The council chambers fell completely silent. These were beings who had built an empire on strength and military might. Who viewed most other species as beneath them. Who had barely tolerated diplomatic relations with humans for years. But they could not ignore the words of one of their own royal line. They could not dismiss the tears streaming down the young prince's face as he begged them to understand what he had learned. The chief ambassador, a stern female who had spent decades negotiating treaties, stood up. She said that perhaps the Verithans had been wrong about humans. Perhaps there was more to measure in a species than technology or military power. Perhaps the humans understood something that the Verithan Empire had forgotten in their centuries of expansion and conquest. 3 days later, the Verithan Emperor himself appeared on broadcasts across the galaxy. He thanked Emma by name. He called her a hero not just to his family but to his entire people. He announced that the Verithan Empire was establishing new cultural exchange programs with humanity. Their best students would study on Earth. Human students would be welcomed on Verith Prime. The barriers that had kept their peoples apart would come down. But the changes went deeper than official announcements. Regular Verithan citizens started reaching out to humans they had previously ignored. They wanted to understand these strange beings who valued compassion as much as strength. Who taught their children to help those in need before worrying about status or power. Who could be terrified but act anyway because it was the right thing to do. Other species noticed. The Caliph, who had always admired the Verithans, began questioning their own prejudices about humans. If the mighty Verithan Empire could admit they were wrong, maybe others should reconsider too. The Draconians, who had kept mostly to themselves, started opening more trade routes to human colonies. The Zentari, still stinging from their loss at the tournament, found themselves being asked uncomfortable questions by their own people about why they valued winning over integrity. Emma herself tried to go back to normal life. She returned to school, helped her mom at the restaurant, played with her friends. But normal had changed. The Verithan prince sent her messages every week, telling her about his home world and asking about Earth. His family sent gifts that her mother insisted they send back until Emma explained that refusing would be insulting. Other alien children started showing up at her mom's restaurant. Not because the food was fancy but because they had heard a human child there understood what it meant to be scared and far from home. Emma's mother found herself cooking dishes from a dozen different worlds, learning recipes from grateful parents whose children felt safe in her little establishment. The mayor gave Emma a medal at a city ceremony. She stood on stage looking uncomfortable while officials made speeches. But the part she remembered was afterward. A young Zentari couple approached her. They had just moved to Earth and felt lost in this strange place. They said knowing there were humans like her made them feel less afraid. That maybe they could make a home here after all. That night, Emma sat on her apartment balcony looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there was a young Verithan prince who was probably looking at the same stars. Thinking about a human girl who had shared her sandwich. Who had held his hand when he was scared. Who had shown him that kindness was not weakness. The galaxy was vast and full of different species. But maybe, Emma thought they were not so different after all. Maybe everyone just wanted to feel safe. To be treated with kindness. To know that someone would stand up for them when they needed help. One small act of compassion had rippled outward across the stars. And nothing would ever be quite the same again.